Hey, psych students, welcome to Module 6. This module, we're going to be covering probability, which is a lot of times people's favorite topics because you can apply it to a bunch of different scenarios. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this and you kind of get to come up with an example of your own. So if I click into Module 6, obviously go over your learning objectives and the read and review. For this read and review, I have a couple of videos in terms of probability, just kind of going over the basics of understanding it. I give you an example over here in terms of how it relates to picking out some marbles. So if you were to pick at random, different colored marbles, what's the probability of picking that certain marble, and kind of walks you through step by step on like how to understand and eliminate the colors and how many numbers there are in terms of the percentages. So that's what is going to be for your viewing pleasure in Module 6. Your assignments are going to include your MindTap exercises, of course. Just go ahead and complete everything for Chapter 6 in MindTap, and then your discussion question. For your discussion question, I have a fun little scenario that gives you an example. So I wanted to kind of explain probability and break it down for you. For those people who are visual, I thought this might be a good way to do that. So probability is really, if you don't know what it is, it's really kind of figuring out the possible outcomes of something, right? So I was talking about if you're going to pick a marble out of a bag and you have like yellow and red and blue marbles, what's the probability of picking a yellow marble if you have like 12 yellow marbles, 6 red, and 4 blue, right? If you have 12 yellow marbles, the probability of selecting one of those marbles over the other ones is probably going to be higher, but exactly what percent higher would that be? Same thing if you look at cards. All right, so I give you this example in terms of if you're playing Texas Hold'em, and if you don't know what that is, it's a poker game. And if you're at the Riverside Casino in Laughlin and you have the king of clubs and the queen of clubs in your hands, and the board is showing a 3 of spades, an 8 of clubs, and a 7 of hearts, and on the turn, which is the 4th card that comes out, you have an ace of clubs, what is the probability of you getting another club on the river, which would mean that 5th card, and it would make you a flush? So that means you'd have 5 cards to a flush, which would be 5 of these clubs. Okay, so we have to figure out how to calculate that. Okay, so the first thing that we would do is that we would say, okay, well, how many cards are in a deck? Okay, so there's 50 cards in a standard deck. All right, so there's already 4 cards on the table because that's the community cards, and you already have 2 cards in your hand. All right, so that's 4 plus 2, which is 6. So the total number of possible outcomes would be 52 minus 6, which would have 46 more cards remaining in the deck. All right, so there's 13 cards to each suit because we have spades, clubs, hearts, and diamonds. So that's 13 for each of those. So 13 times 4 is 52. But we have to remember that there's already 2 clubs on the board, which is the 8 of clubs and the ace of clubs, and you have the 2 clubs in your hand, all right, which is the king and the queen. So if you take 13, which is the total number of clubs, and you subtract 4, which is the amount of clubs that are showing, you have 9, okay? So then you would take 9 and you would have to divide that, and we would buy the remaining cards, so that would be 46. Which are the number of cards that are left, and you'd have 19.5%, okay, chance of a club coming as your 5th card to make that flush. So you have about a 1 in 5 chance of hitting that flush to make your hand. All right, so if someone were to bet large, you might think about folding your cards because you only have about almost a 20% chance of hitting that on the river. And when you think about it, that's a 1 in 5 chance. You can hit it, absolutely, but it's not as good as like a 4 in 5 chance, right? If it was a little bit more like 80%, that's what you want, or 100%, that would even be better. So this is, of course, just an example that I'm giving you. But for this discussion, I want you to think of a real world example where you used probability, or you could possibly use probability to predict an outcome of something, okay? So what I want you to do is predict what the probability would be of that specific example. And then you can calculate that probability kind of like I did up here. So you're showing how you're calculating it and you're explaining it. And then do your results show that there's a good chance or an unlikely chance of it occurring, whatever the scenario is that you're explaining, okay? And then how does the probability compare to your prediction? So if you think before you calculated that you have a good chance, and then you realize, whoops, it's actually not that good, kind of like my example, you only have about a 20% chance of hitting this, then state that. All right. So you do not need an APA reference because this is a real world example. I just want you to kind of brainstorm, and I want you to do the math and calculate that and explain it. Make sure your post is 200 words though, and that you reply to another student. So again, you're just going to have your discussion question, your mind tap, think of a fun example, and I will see you guys in Module 7.